Before we dive into tonight's story, if you enjoy these dark tales and want to keep the chills coming every night, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss a moment. I've got more spine-tingling stories just for you, waiting to haunt your dreams. On August 16th, 2023, a young woman was admitted to one of the most renowned medical centers in the world, the Mayo Clinic, in critical condition. Her internal organs were failing rapidly. Her body was severely dehydrated, and her temperature fluctuated unpredictably. Despite emergency measures, doctors struggled to stabilize her, unable to determine the cause of the sudden deterioration. Betty Bauman, a successful pharmacist known for her dedication to health and wellness, was now fighting for her life. Her colleagues were in shock. Just the day before, she had been full of energy, and now medical professionals were desperately working to save her without understanding what they were dealing with. One by one, potential diagnoses were ruled out. Lab tests failed to provide clear answers, and her condition continued to worsen. What could have caused such a rapid decline in the health of a young, seemingly healthy woman? As doctors searched for an explanation, they began to realize that the cause was not a natural illness. Betty Bauman was born in 1991 in Kansas. She grew up in a respectable, hard-working family that valued honesty, perseverance, and care for one another. From an early age, she displayed determination, seriousness, and a strong work ethic in everything she pursued. She excelled in school, particularly in science, with a deep passion for biology and chemistry. After high school, she enrolled in a university's pharmacy program, where she quickly distinguished herself as one of the top students. Unlike many of her peers who simply memorized theory, Betty was genuinely fascinated by medical processes, chemical compounds, and the effects of medications on the human body. Following graduation, she launched her career, initially working in a pharmacy before securing a position at a medical facility. There, she quickly gained the respect of her colleagues and earned a reputation as a dedicated and knowledgeable professional. Connor Bauman was born in 1993, also in Kansas, but his upbringing was different. He had an egocentric and calculating nature, often manipulating people to get what he wanted. Unlike Betty, he never embraced the values of hard work and integrity. Instead, he focused on finding ways to achieve maximum benefit with minimal effort. In school, he was not a standout student academically, but his charisma and quick thinking allowed him to navigate difficult situations with ease. Connor had a knack for over the right people and presenting himself in a favorable light. Choosing to pursue a career in pharmaceuticals, he enrolled in the same university as Betty. However, his interest in medicine differed significantly from that of his peers. While others were motivated by the desire to help people, Connor viewed pharmacology through a different lens, one focused on influence and control over the human body. Later, he decided to continue his education by entering a medical program, seeking greater career opportunities and an enhanced professional status. Betty and Connor met while studying at university. Despite their obvious differences in personality, they developed a relationship. Betty saw him as an intelligent and ambitious man, while Connor recognized that being with her could offer certain advantages. The couple got married in May 2021. A few months later, Betty received a job offer from one of the prestigious medical centers in the world, the Mayo Clinic. This opportunity led them to relocate to Minnesota. For Betty, it was a major step forward in her career, but for Connor, it meant something else. He was now living in the shadow of his successful wife. At the time, he was still in school, and all financial responsibilities fell on Betty. She covered their living expenses, paid for his education, and handled their day-to-day costs. Connor did not work, relying entirely on his wife's support, and over time, he became accustomed to this arrangement. As the months passed, their relationship began to shift. Betty became deeply focused on her work, expanded her social circle, and thrived in her professional environment. Meanwhile, Connor, feeling dependent and sidelined, grew increasingly dissatisfied with his position. Outwardly, they appeared to be a successful couple, But behind the scenes, tension was building. At some point, they agreed to set certain boundaries in their relationship, choosing to transition to an open arrangement. However, they had clear rules. Emotional attachments to outside partners were off limits, and any involvement was meant to remain purely physical. Over time, it became evident that this agreement had been broken. Betty began to suspect that Connor had developed more than just a casual connection with someone else. When she finally uncovered the truth, her suspicions were confirmed. This wasn't just an indiscretion. It was real affection. For Betty, that was the final straw. She made it clear that she wanted a divorce. To her, it was a logical decision. But for Connor, it meant losing his comfortable lifestyle, financial security, and the advantages that came with their marriage. He realized that after a divorce, he would have to start over, with mounting debts and no safety net. Divorce wasn't part of his plan. He saw another way, one that would give him not just freedom but financial gain as well. On August 10, 2023, Betty Bauman was at home in Rochester, Minnesota. She had invited a close friend over for the evening to catch up, relax, and take a break from work. It had been a while since they had seen each other, and they were both looking forward to time together. Connor was also at home, but he rarely took part in such gatherings. He usually kept to himself, showed little interest in Betty's conversations with friends, and preferred to focus on his own activities. But that day, he was acting differently. At one point, seemingly out of nowhere, Connor offered to make smoothies. This was unusual for Betty. He had never been interested in cooking, never showed concern for what she ate, and had never done anything like this before. Household tasks typically fell on her shoulders, so this sudden gesture felt out of character. Connor went into the kitchen, gathered the ingredients, and started preparing the drinks. Betty's friend, noticing his enthusiasm, was a little surprised but didn't think much of it. Betty also didn't question it, though a small voice in the back of her mind told her something felt off about his behavior. A few minutes later, he returned with 2 glasses. Betty took a sip, but immediately noticed something was wrong. The drink had a bitter, slightly salty aftertaste that seemed strange. She frowned, confused by the unusual flavor. Her friend, curious about the reaction, decided to try it as well. The taste was indeed unpleasant. The smoothie was ruined, but at that moment, no one thought to question what might have been in it. They simply set the glasses aside and moved on. Connor offered no explanation. He calmly watched their reactions without showing any emotion. He didn't suggest making another batch, didn't try to explain the odd taste, and showed no interest in the fact that the drink was undrinkable. Betty quickly dismissed the incident, assuming he had just made a bad smoothie. But in reality, this was no accident. It was the first attempt, one that failed only because she hadn't finished the drink. Connor realized he had made a mistake. Next time, he needed to make sure it worked. On August 14, 2023, everything at the Bauman home in Rochester, Minnesota seemed normal. Betty came home late after a long day at work, feeling exhausted. She had spent hours in the lab discussing new pharmaceutical research with colleagues. All she wanted was to relax, have a quick dinner, and get some rest. Connor knew this was a critical moment for him. His first attempt a few days earlier had not gone as planned. The amount had been too small and the taste too noticeable. He had taken note of his mistakes and was determined to be more careful this time. This time, he had done his research. Throughout the day, he studied how the added substance would affect the body, calculating the exact amount needed to cause a severe reaction without immediate consequences. He waited for the perfect moment, when Betty was tired and less likely to notice anything unusual. As soon as she stepped into the kitchen, he casually offered her a smoothie. It seemed natural enough, considering he had already done this before in recent days. He acted relaxed, giving her no reason to be suspicious. Betty took the glass, drank a few sips, and calmly finished the smoothie. This time, nothing about the taste seemed suspicious. Connor had carefully adjusted the ingredients, masking any unusual flavors. That evening, Betty began feeling weak. A slight fatigue crept in, accompanied by a mild headache. It didn't seem serious, so she didn't pay much attention to it. By the morning of August 15th, her condition had worsened. She woke up with a pounding headache, nausea, and overwhelming fatigue. Soon after, she began experiencing severe stomach issues. Her body was losing fluids rapidly, but every sip of water triggered another wave of sickness. By midday, things had only gotten worse. Betty could barely get out of bed, feeling as though her body was weighed down. Her temperature had risen, and her muscles ached. By the evening, her weakness had become so intense that even walking to the bathroom was a struggle. Her body was severely dehydrated, and the episodes of sickness continued. Every attempt to eat resulted in further decline. On August 16th, she realized she could no longer manage on her own. Her body was so depleted that even making a simple phone call felt exhausting. She reached out to the Mayo Clinic and described her symptoms. That same day, Betty Bauman was admitted to the hospital in critical condition. She was severely dehydrated, her blood pressure was unstable, and her temperature was elevated. Doctors immediately began a full evaluation, but the cause of her sudden and rapid decline remained a mystery. Initial test results revealed serious complications affecting her internal organs. The most concerning discovery was in her intestines. Scans showed areas of necrotic tissue, meaning parts of her digestive tract were no longer receiving enough oxygen and had begun to die. An emergency surgery was scheduled. During the operation, doctors removed the damaged portion, but they were unsure if the process had already spread further. After surgery, she was placed in intensive care and connected to life-supporting equipment, but her condition continued to deteriorate. Within hours, her kidneys began to fail. She was placed on dialysis, but the decline did not stop. By August 18th, her liver was also showing signs of distress. Tests indicated a sharp increase in liver enzymes, pointing to toxic damage. The severity of Betty's condition left the medical team baffled. She was a young, healthy woman with no history of chronic illness. There was no clear explanation for why her body was breaking down so quickly. During this time, Connor Bauman displayed unusual persistence. He repeatedly told doctors that his wife supposedly had a rare genetic condition known as HLH. This claim was strange, as HLH typically presents in early childhood, and Betty had never shown any signs of it. Doctors reviewed her medical history, but found no evidence of the condition. Despite this, Connor continued to insist that HLH was the reason for her critical state. Even more unsettling, he was telling friends and family that Betty was dying from this disease, despite the fact that the medical team had no such diagnosis. On August 19th, Betty's condition became critical. Multiple organ failure had begun. Her heart, kidneys, and liver were no longer functioning properly. Fluid accumulated in her lungs, making it difficult for her to breathe. Despite intensive medical efforts, the prognosis was grim. On August 20th, 2023 at 2:50 p.m., Betty Bauman was officially pronounced deceased. For the medical team, the cause of her passing remained a mystery, but her husband's behavior raised concerns. He didn't demand answers, didn't ask about potential causes, and didn't push for further investigation. Instead, he acted as if he had already known what was coming. Immediately after Betty's passing, doctors brought up the need for an autopsy. The circumstances surrounding her sudden decline were unclear, and standard medical procedure required a postmortem examination. However, Connor strongly objected. He claimed that his wife had always insisted she didn't want her body to be treated as a subject for medical studies. This statement raised eyebrows among the Mayo Clinic staff. Typically, family members seek answers when a seemingly healthy person passes away unexpectedly. Most demand further testing and explanations. Connor, on the other hand, was adamant that no autopsy be performed, and that no one should investigate further. Law enforcement officers who were brought into the case found his behavior suspicious. In addition to refusing an autopsy, he was in an unusual hurry to arrange the funeral. Just hours after Betty's passing, he filed the paperwork for cremation. He wanted the process to move as quickly as possible, but the doctors intervened. They weren't convinced that her passing was due to natural causes and decided to put a hold on cremation until further investigations could be conducted. The next day, Connor began drafting an obituary. This turned out to be yet another odd detail in the case. He failed to mention Betty's mother and sister, the two people who were closest to her. Instead, he only included himself and their dog. It seemed as though he was deliberately minimizing Betty's family connections, almost as if he was trying to erase parts of her life. Within just 2 days, he started removing traces of her presence from their home. All photos of Betty disappeared. Her personal belongings were either packed away or discarded. Friends who visited noticed that the house no longer felt like the place where a woman had recently lived. It was as if she had never been there at all. Around this time, Connor invited an acquaintance over for drinks. That person later admitted they had expected to see a grieving husband in distress. However, upon arriving at the house, they found Connor looking relaxed, even cheerful. Throughout the conversation, he showed no signs of sorrow, never spoke about what had happened, and didn't seem like someone who had just lost his wife days earlier. A week later, Connor made it clear that he was moving on with his life. Another woman moved into the house, quickly taking the place where Betty had lived just weeks before. This was a shock to Betty's friends and family. His behavior didn't just raise questions, it suggested that Betty's passing hadn't caught him off guard. Just days after the funeral, Connor began openly discussing the life insurance payout he had received following his wife's passing. The policy was worth $500,000. He spoke about it casually, without any sign of grief or remorse. There was no mention of wishing he could have his wife back instead of the money. Instead, it seemed as though he was content with how things had played out. Many people had known and respected Betty, both as a professional and as a person. Those close to her expected her husband to be devastated, struggling to process the loss. But instead, he appeared relaxed. Some who overheard his conversations noted that he spoke about the insurance money as if it had solved his financial troubles rather than marking the loss of his wife. Investigators looking into the case took particular interest in Connor's financial situation. Soon, they uncovered that he had been struggling with significant debt. During his years in school, he had accumulated large student loans, which had only continued to grow. His financial position was unstable. Unlike Betty, who had a steady and well-paying job, Connor was financially dependent. He was still completing his medical training, and his residence salary wasn't nearly enough to cover all of their expenses. As investigators took a closer look at his actions after Betty's passing, more unsettling details emerged. Even before receiving the insurance payout, he had made no effort to seek additional income, nor did he seem concerned about his financial future. This behavior raised suspicions. If Betty's passing had been unexpected, wouldn't he have been desperate for answers? Wouldn't he have questioned the doctors, pushed for explanations, or demanded further testing? But instead, he acted as if he already knew what had happened, as if any further investigation would only create problems for him. Ultimately, detectives concluded that his financial struggles might have been a key motive behind the crime. Connor had a clear incentive to benefit from his wife's passing. He stood to gain far more financially than he would have in a divorce. Those who knew Betty couldn't believe that someone so close to her could have planned such a cold and calculated act for financial gain. But Connor's behavior, his lack of emotion, and his financial troubles pointed to the possibility that Betty's passing was no accident. Investigators obtained blood samples that had been taken during Betty's hospitalization. When tested, they revealed a shocking discovery. Her system contained a dangerously high concentration of colchicine, a substance used in medical treatments but lethal when taken in excess. Colchicine is rarely associated with intentional poisoning, as it is difficult to obtain without professional access. While primarily used to treat gout, its toxic properties make it extremely dangerous if misused. The symptoms of an overdose matched Betty's condition exactly. Initial nausea, stomach issues, and weakness, followed by organ failure and intestinal necrosis. Once investigators had this information, They began looking into who could have had access to the substance. Their search quickly led them to Connor Bauman. As someone with a background in medicine, he had the knowledge required to use colchicine effectively. Even more concerning, he had previously worked at a poison control center, where he studied the effects of toxic compounds on the human body. This discovery became the first major indication that he could be connected to what had happened. Detectives started interviewing Betty's friends and family. Her close friend, who had been at her home on August 10th, recounted the strange incident with the smoothie. She remembered that the drink had tasted bitter and slightly salty, and when both of them tried it, they assumed it had simply gone bad. The woman also recalled a joke she had made at the time, suggesting that Connor might have put something in the drink. Back then, they had laughed it off without taking it seriously. But now, in hindsight, those words carried a completely different weight. Investigators focused on this detail, as it suggested that an attempt to poison Betty may have occurred even before her hospitalization. If the first dose had been too low, it was logical to assume that Connor had tried again, increasing the concentration of the substance. Betty's family members, including her mother and sister, shared that in the weeks leading up to the tragedy, she had been seriously considering divorce. They remembered her saying she was unhappy in the marriage and was preparing to move forward with separation. All the evidence pointed to the possibility that Betty's passing was not a tragic accident, but rather a carefully planned crime. With confirmation of a toxic substance in Betty's system, investigators worked to gather further proof. They obtained permission to search Connor's workspace at the Mayo Clinic, where he was completing his medical residency. A review of his work computer revealed alarming details. His browser history contained searches that were impossible to ignore, including lethal dose of colchicine, how to hide traces of poison, can police track search history, how to erase purchase records on Amazon. These searches became a crucial part of the case. They indicated that Connor had researched deadly dosages in advance and had actively looked for ways to cover his tracks. Additionally, upon reviewing Connor Bauman's online accounts, investigators discovered that he had purchased substances unrelated to his medical practice. Among them were colchicine and sodium nitrate. Sodium nitrate was another concerning find. While commonly used in the chemical and food industries, it could become toxic at certain dosages. Investigators concluded that Connor had been experimenting with different compounds, searching for the most discreet way to harm his wife without raising suspicion. On October 20, 2023, authorities issued a warrant for Connor Bauman's arrest. By this point, the case against him was strong. Lab reports, search history on his work computer, and his suspicious behavior following Betty's passing all formed a solid body of evidence. His arrest took place in the early morning at his home in Rochester, Minnesota. Officers arrived with a warrant, and Bauman was taken into custody without resistance. He remained calm, showed no signs of aggression, but also did not attempt to defend himself. His lack of fear or panic stood out to investigators. The court set his bail at $2 million, but Bauman was unable to pay the amount. His financial situation shifted drastically after the arrest. His accounts were frozen, and his assets became subject to further investigation. Left without access to funds, he remained in custody while awaiting trial. Meanwhile, investigators continued gathering additional evidence to build a complete picture of the crime. They examined his communications, financial records, and interactions with colleagues and acquaintances to establish possible motives and uncover any further incriminating details. Although the legal process was just beginning, one thing was already clear. Connor Bauman would not escape justice. Following his arrest, Betty's family and friends demanded the harshest punishment possible. To them, there was no doubt that her passing was the result of a carefully planned crime. They pushed for a life sentence, believing that someone capable of such a calculated act should never be allowed to walk free. The prosecution worked tirelessly to strengthen the case, ensuring that the evidence would leave no room for doubt. The trial had not yet begun, but the collected proof overwhelmingly pointed to Connor's guilt. For Betty's family, the wait for justice was agonizing. They struggled to come to terms with the reality that someone she had trusted, someone who had been part of her life for years, had ultimately betrayed her in the worst possible way. Her mother and sister recalled the conversations where Betty had expressed her desire for a divorce. She had confided in them about her unhappiness and her wish to move on, never imagining that it would end in such a tragic way. Betty's friends also played a crucial role. Many of them became witnesses in the case, providing testimony and key information that helped strengthen the investigation. They stood by her family, demanding justice and ensuring that the person responsible would be held accountable. As of now, Connor Bauman's trial has not yet taken place. Since his arrest on October 20th, 2023, law enforcement continues to gather evidence and prepare for court proceedings. A trial date has yet to be set. As the shadows grow deeper, prepare yourself for another chilling tale. It was supposed to be a normal weekend. 14-year-old twins Jehyem and Jalil Carter packed their bags and left home for a visit they'd made many times before. Their father was expecting them. Their mother, Kamani, stood on the porch that Saturday morning, watching them go. She reminded them to call when they arrived. They smiled, said they would, but the phone never rang. By Sunday evening, Kamani was calling their father, trying to stay calm. Desmond told her he'd dropped the boys off near home, that they should have been there by now. But the hours passed. No texts, no footsteps at the door, just silence. And by Monday, that silence had turned to fear. The boys had vanished. No one knew where they were. But the question wasn't just where the boys were. It was who made sure they'd never come home. Holding hands. As they grew, they only became more inseparable. Jehyem, the older twin by 4 minutes, was loud, confident, and always the first to speak. Jalil, quieter, artistic, thoughtful, always the first to notice what others missed. In school, they shared straight A's, P trophies, and a habit of never letting each other fall behind. By the time they reached 8th grade, teachers described them as different but one, like two halves of the same heartbeat. They were known, loved, and respected for their talents, their humility, and the kind of bond only twins could truly understand. Their parents, Kamani and Desmond Langley, had been high school sweethearts, class of 2003. Young love turned into a young marriage by 2007. Desmond, ambitious and relentless, started his career in real estate, while Kamani worked night shifts as a nursing assistant. They built a life slowly, brick by brick. First apartment, first car, first home. But as Desmond's business took off in 2015, the cracks began to show. Long hours turned into late nights. Business trips turned into emotional distance. Birthdays missed. Family dinners skipped. Nights spent answering work calls instead of checking homework or watching movies with the boys. Kamani tried to be understanding. She believed in his vision. But the distance between them became more than physical. It was emotional. Conversations became short. Arguments became routine. She asked him once, through tears, "Are we even a family anymore?" He didn't answer. There was no cheating, no betrayal in the traditional sense. But the neglect cut deep. Kamani began to feel like a single mother while still wearing the ring. Desmond, on the other hand, said he felt misunderstood. That she didn't see how hard he was working for their future. That he wasn't appreciated. In 2019, after years of slowly drifting apart, they sat at the kitchen table and agreed to separate. No yelling. Desmond moved out 2 weeks later. By the time the twins turned 9, in late 2018, the divorce was finalized. It was civil, but not painless. Kamani got primary custody. Desmond, still wanting to be present, settled into weekend visits and holiday rotations. The boys adjusted, at least on the outside. In February 2021, Desmond met Alicia Holloway, 38, striking and confident. She had grown up on the west side of Greensboro, raised by a mother who worked 2 jobs and believed children were both a burden and a blessing. Alicia never wanted kids. She was focused on building herself, grinding through community college, climbing through admin jobs until she landed a position at a luxury property management firm. That's where she met Desmond. Charming, wealthy, self-assured. The kind of man her mother used to warn her about. But Alicia didn't flinch. She leaned in. Their connection was fast, and by August 2021, they were married. No big wedding, just a courthouse and champagne. But Alicia hadn't fully understood what came with Desmond, the twins. At first, she played polite. She made room for them on weekends, cooked enough dinner to avoid criticism, smiled for the holiday photos, but it never felt real. The boys noticed, and so did Kamani. Alicia rarely spoke directly to them. Jehyem once told his mom, "She acts like we're guests in our own dad's house." And in many ways they were. Whenever they visited Desmond's home in the suburban gated community of Highland Creek, they felt tension in the walls. Alicia didn't shout. She didn't scold. But her silence filled the rooms louder than any argument could. By early 2023, the pattern had formed. Desmond would miss date nights because he was attending Jalil's art showcase. He would reschedule a weekend getaway to watch Jehyem's football championship. He wasn't choosing sides. He was being a father. But to Alicia, it felt like betrayal. She began venting to friends. He disappears into father mode whenever they show up. She texted a close coworker on January 17, 2024, at 8:42 p.m. "It's like I'm not even in the room." Those little moments stacked like bricks, missed dinners, canceled anniversaries, boys laughing in the living room while she sat alone in the kitchen. And it wasn't just the presence of the twins. It was what they represented, a life Desmond had before her, a connection she would never have. She didn't carry those boys. She didn't raise them. And yet, every time they arrived, the house shifted away from her. The tipping point came on February 24, 2024, during Jehyem's regional track meet. Desmond skipped Alicia's company gala to attend. Kamani was there. The boys won, and the family took a picture, just the four of them, including their mom. Desmond grinning wide with his arms around his sons. Kamani smiling with her eyes closed. Alicia saw it posted online that night at 11:17 p.m. She didn't comment. She didn't say a word. But that's when something changed. Because sometimes resentment doesn't explode. It simmers. And then it decides. Friday, March 1, 2024. The air in Charlotte held that strange early spring stillness. The city hadn't quite thawed out from winter, but the sun felt heavier than usual. That afternoon, Desmond texted Kamani, "I'll pick the boys up at 10 tomorrow." She responded, "Make sure they eat real food this time, not just fast food." He replied with a thumbs up and a joke about Alicia cooking. No tension, no warning signs, just co-parenting in motion. Saturday morning, March 2. Right on time, Desmond pulled up outside Kamani's home. The twins came out with duffel bags, jackets half-zipped, already play-fighting on the sidewalk. Kamani stood on the porch, sipping coffee. She told them to behave and call when they got there. They laughed. "We always do." Desmond honked twice, waved at her, and drove off. From the outside, it was just another drop-off. But inside that car, there were three versions of the weekend ahead. Desmond's, the boys', and Alicia's. When they pulled into the driveway on Sweetwater Grove Lane at 10:47 a.m., Alicia was already in the kitchen, dressed, but not cooking. The house was quiet. She greeted them with a forced smile, barely making eye contact. Jalil offered a soft hi. Jehyem gave a head nod, and Desmond pretended not to notice the tension. By lunchtime, the boys were in the den watching basketball. Alicia sat alone on the back porch, her phone in her hand, screen dim. She was scrolling, but not aimlessly. At 2:16 p.m., she opened her hidden text thread, under a contact name saved as laundry pickup. It was no laundromat. It was Kendrick. Full name, Kendrick Royce Simmons, 42, known on the east side as Kilo. Her ex, her mistake, her backup plan. Their last real contact had been in 2020, when she blocked him for good. But on February 26th, she had unblocked him. And on March 2nd, she sent a message that simply read, "We need to talk. Face to face. Same spot." The same spot was a vacant lot behind an abandoned warehouse on Clanton Road. It was a place where no one asked questions. That night, after Desmond and the twins went to sleep, Alicia left the house, said she needed air. She drove 12 minutes in silence, parked in the dark, and waited. Kilo pulled up in a blacked-out SUV. They didn't hug. They didn't smile. "I need it done tomorrow," she said. "Clean?" he asked. "Quick," she replied. 6 stacks. "You'll get 3 now, 3 after." No names were mentioned, but they both knew who. Sunday morning, March 3rd, Desmond made waffles. The boys were in good spirits, arguing over who could run faster. Alicia stayed in the bedroom longer than usual. She didn't eat. She didn't speak. At 3 p.m., she opened the locked drawer in her vanity and pulled out an envelope of cash. $3,000 in fresh bills. She placed it in a manila folder, sealed it, and labeled it with a sticky note. Tax papers. At 1:48 p.m., she left the house again, claiming she had to drop documents off for work. She drove the same route, handed the envelope through Kilo's window, didn't say a word, and left. He smiled, not because of the money, because he hated feeling useful, and this made him feel useful. Back at the house, Desmond told the boys he'd be dropping them off at 4.30 near their mom's block, just like always. But that never happened. Instead, at 4:10 p.m., Alicia walked into the living room and said she needed something from the store. She asked Desmond if he could give her a few minutes alone with the boys before they left. "I just want to say goodbye properly this time," she added, almost laughing. Desmond stepped out, and when he came back, they were gone. Alicia told him they'd decided to walk down to the corner store, said they wanted to stretch their legs, said they'd meet him at the gas station. Desmond waited there for nearly 40 minutes, called both their phones. No answer. He drove back home, confused but not yet alarmed. By the time he got there, Alicia was already out on the back porch again, smoking, something she hadn't done in months. He asked where they were. She shrugged. They'd probably went to their mom's early. That night, he went to bed thinking it was all just miscommunication, that the boys were safe, that Kamani had picked them up. But Kamani hadn't. She was still pacing her living room, phone in hand, trying to convince herself they were just running late. Sunday afternoon, March 3rd, 2024. Jehyem and Jalil never arrive home. Kamani Carter waits at the window, expecting to see her boys walking up the driveway, just like they always do. But the street stays quiet, and her calls to their phones go unanswered. She dials Desmond. He answers, says he dropped them off at a gas station near her house around 4:30 p.m., said the boys asked to walk the rest of the way. But something about his voice doesn't sit right. Kamani had been home. She saw no one. She heard nothing. She drives to the gas station he mentioned. It's quiet. She walks in, asks the clerk. He shakes his head. He didn't see them. She checks the lot, looks up and down the street. No sign of the twins. She drives through nearby blocks, calling out their names, calling their phones. Still nothing. That evening, she contacts police. A missing person report is filed. Monday morning, March 4th, detectives pull surveillance footage from the gas station Desmond claimed to have dropped them off at. The video plays. There's no sign of his car, no boys getting out, no drop-off. But another camera nearby catches something else. Footage that sends a chill through the room. The black SUV is parked near Desmond's neighborhood. At 4:08 p.m., the vehicle is still. At 4:12 p.m., 2 boys approach. They get in. The SUV pulls away. They are never seen getting out. That was the last time anyone saw Jehyem and Jalil alive. The search begins. Flyers go up. Posts flood social media. Neighbors and volunteers join the effort, but nothing turns up. The trail goes cold until later that week. He said he dropped them off. But there's no footage of his vehicle dropping them. He lied. But why did he lie? Was he protecting someone? Or was he hiding something? Local churches held prayer vigils. Kimani didn't sleep. She stopped eating. She kept her porch light on every night, just in case. Desmond grew quieter, kept his distance. Alicia barely spoke during questioning. She said she had no idea who the SUV belonged to. Said she thought the boys had left to walk. When asked where she was that afternoon, she said she was home. Said she smoked a cigarette and watched them go. But there was a crack in her story. Her phone pinged 3 miles away at 1:48 p.m. at an abandoned lot on Clanton Road, and her bank statements, once subpoenaed, showed a withdrawal of $3,000 made that very morning. Still, no arrests were made. No charges, just pressure and pain. A retired couple from Statesville takes a weekend hike along a lesser-known mountain trail in the Brushy Mountains, an unmarked turnoff near Highway 268. They've walked this path before, but never this far. The wind is still, the birds unusually quiet. Something feels off. They stop when they catch a foul smell. Thick, sharp, it cuts through the mountain air. The man looks around, notices disturbed soil off to the right, a patch of earth that looks uneven. Freshly turned, flies hover above it. The woman steps closer and sees black plastic beneath a layer of leaves. Her breath catches. They don't touch it. They don't go further. They back away and call 911. Local deputies arrive within an hour and secure the area. The soil is roped off. Crime scene tape stretches between the trees. The forensics team arrives from Iredell County. Cameras click. Soil samples are taken. Then, slowly, carefully, the digging begins. Under no more than 6 inches of loose dirt, 2 human bodies are found, wrapped tightly in heavy-duty plastic. Duct tape seal at the ends. Both boys are laid side by side. One still has a wristwatch on. It's cracked. Frozen at 4:42 p.m., one has torn fingernails, bruising on the knuckles, offensive wounds across the arms. The plastic is peeled back. One boy shows signs of blunt trauma to the back of the skull. The other, visible strangulation marks deep along the throat. Rope burns. They'd been dead for over a week. It wasn't quick, and it wasn't painless. One of them fought back, fought hard. The scene is silent, except for the sound of camera shutters and the rustling of branches. Investigators work methodically. They log everything. A partial shoe print in the mud. Deep tread, wide base, possibly from work boots. Fresh tire impressions nearby. Knobby pattern, suggesting off-road capability. 3 cigarette butts left near a tree stump, one still slightly burnt at the tip. A crushed energy drink can half buried in leaves. Nothing is touched without gloves. Every inch of the area is swept. About 20 feet downhill from the grave, under a tangle of brush, an officer finds something metallic. Small, flat, a cheap burner phone. It's dead. No SIM, but investigators bag it anyway. Back at the lab, the tech team charges it, pulls its cache data. One outgoing call stands out, time stamped just hours before the boys went missing. The number wasn't in any contact list, but it had called one phone once for exactly 17 seconds. The number belonged to Kendrick Simmons. The investigation needed direction, fast. That's when Detective Raylan Miles was assigned to the case. A 47-year-old veteran of the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department, Raylan wasn't the kind of detective who relied on hunches or headline pressure. He was methodical, quiet, known for picking holes in airtight alibis and spotting silence louder than any lie. He had seen a lot in his 2 decades on the force. Gang hits, domestic disputes, children used as pawns in adult wars. But something about this case hit different. 2 boys, innocent, disappeared after a weekend visit with their father. A stepmother with cold eyes and too few words. A father whose story didn't match the cameras. Raylan didn't come to the scene with assumptions. He came with a notebook, a recorder, and a single goal: the truth. He requested every hour of surveillance footage himself. sat through them personally. At 11:03 p.m. that night, detectives pull Kendrick's DMV photo. A match is made between the vehicle seen in surveillance footage and the one registered to his name. DMV files show the vehicle sold 2 years ago, but no title transfer was ever completed. Police issue a BOLO across 4 counties. His known associates are questioned. Alicia Langley's name comes up more than once. Her phone records are revisited. Ping data from March 3rd confirmed she was near Clanton Road, the same place the envelope of cash was passed to Kendrick. And she was back home before Desmond said he took the boys out. Desmond's timeline begins to fall apart under pressure. Investigators revisit Alicia Langley's bank records. On the morning of March 3rd, she withdrew $3,000 in cash from a branch. No statement made about the reason. Desmond told officers she left the house shortly after, carrying a manila folder she said held tax papers. She was gone less than an hour. The folder was never seen again. No one can confirm where she went. Her phone pinged near Clanton Road during that same time frame. When questioned again, Alicia claimed she hadn't seen Kendrick in years. But now, police suspect that wasn't true. They don't confront her yet. They wait because they need more. Surveillance from a motel near Winston-Salem catches him on camera just 2 days after the bodies were likely buried. He enters alone. Baggy hoodie, work boots, one plastic bag in hand. No luggage. He pays cash. Checks out in the middle of the night. Leaves no trace. Now the picture is coming into focus, but no arrests have been made. There's still no confession, no murder weapon, just a sequence of details stacking higher with every hour. 2 dead boys in a mountain grave, a burner phone, a black SUV, a trail of tire tracks, a woman with no children of her own, a man with a past, a father whose story is starting to collapse. The investigation hasn't caught up to the motive yet, but the signs are everywhere. And still, one question remains louder than all the rest. Why did Desmond lie? Was he hiding something? Raylan wrote a single sentence in his notes. Either he's protecting her, or he's afraid of what she's capable of. March 15, 2024, 4:37 a.m. A no-knock warrant is executed at a rundown apartment complex on the east side of Winston-Salem. The target, Kendrick Simmons. Police breach the door. It's quiet. No movement. A bedroom light flicks on. Kendrick is found lying on a mattress without sheets, one arm under the pillow, the other reaching slowly toward the nightstand. No resistance. He's cuffed without a word. Inside the apartment, a loaded .38 revolver under the pillow. In the closet, shoved behind a milk crate, an olive green duffel bag. Inside, blood-stained gloves, a black hoodie with fibers matching those found at the burial site, and a second burner phone. Forensics later linked trace blood on the gloves to Jehyem Carter. The original burner phone, recovered near the grave, is also inside the bag. Its casing matches the one found earlier, but this one is intact. Police match serial numbers. The bag becomes the link they've been waiting for. Kendrick is transported to Mecklenburg County for questioning. He says nothing for the first 5 hours. Detectives press him with timeline inconsistencies. Raylan. He didn't yell in the interrogation room. He waited. Pushed pressure slowly. Measured. Every minute Kendrick didn't talk. Raylan leaned in closer. Not with threats, but with the one thing men like Kendrick hate the most. Silence. Ask where he was on March 3rd. He shrugs. They show him the phone logs, the motel footage, the Tahoe. He stays quiet. Then they bring out the bag, the gloves, the hoodie, the blood evidence. His jaw tightens. Eventually, Kendrick cracked. He asks for water. Then he says, "I want to talk." At hour 7, he cracks. He tells them everything. He says Alicia contacted him on February 26th, says she offered $6,000, said she was angry that the boys got all of Desmond's time, that they were the reason her marriage felt like a wall. She told him to make it look like a robbery, said she didn't want blood. Just silence. He agreed. He admits to driving the SUV, picking the boys up. He says they were calm, thought I was just giving them a ride. He says Jalil figured it out too late. Says he panicked. He hit one, choked the other. Says Alicia paid him $3,000 in cash on the third. Said the rest was coming later. Raylan didn't smile. He didn't celebrate. He just stood, closed the folder, and said, "Now we finish this. For those boys." Back in Charlotte, Alicia is arrested the same afternoon. She's calm. Too calm. Says nothing. Doesn't ask why. She's processed and booked. No emotion, no tears. Just silence. When Desmond hears, he's stunned. He's sitting outside the real estate office where they first met. He says nothing for 2 straight hours. When police confront him again, they ask why he lied. Why he said he dropped off the boys when he hadn't. He lowers his head, says he was scared. Said Alicia told him she wanted time alone with them before they left. That she needed to talk to them. That he stepped out. And when he came back, she told him they left on foot. He says he believed her. Says he thought maybe she was trying harder to bond. That maybe something finally changed. He admits he didn't check. He admits he didn't want to question her again. He didn't want another argument. So when Kimani called, he panicked. He made up the gas station story. Said it would blow over. Said he just didn't want to look careless. But careless wasn't the word anymore. It was something else. And the consequences had already been buried in the ground. 3 months later, the trial begins. The courtroom is silent. Jehyem and Jalil's photos sit at the front bench beside their mother. Alicia's defense tries to argue manipulation, emotional distress, but the evidence is overwhelming. Surveillance footage shows the SUV. Bank records show the $3,000 withdrawal. GPS data places her at the meeting point with Kendrick. The recording seals it. A voice memo recovered from Kendrick's burner phone captures Alicia saying just 7 words. "Make it look like a robbery. No mess." The courtroom doesn't flinch. The jury delivers its verdict in less than 3 hours. Kendrick Simmons is sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. Alicia Langley is sentenced to life, eligible for parole after 30 years. She does not look at Desmond as the sentence is read. Kimani holds a photo of her sons in her hands. Not crying, not shaking. Just still. Justice came. But peace never did. Not for her. Not for the boys. Not for the truth that got buried under lies and silence. Desmond Langley sat alone on the edge of his front porch. It was the same spot where the boys used to race down the driveway, backpacks bouncing, laughter trailing behind them. But now the air was still. His voice cracked when he finally spoke. He said he married out of loneliness. Said he didn't know what he was inviting into their lives. He said, "I never knew I married the devil." He said, "I let her into our lives and now they're gone." He didn't ask for sympathy. He didn't expect forgiveness. But he knew he failed to protect his sons. Kimani Carter never left her porch light off again. Every evening it still comes on as if waiting, as if maybe somehow the boys would come walking through the gate. She said, "I told them to call me when they got home." They never did. She hasn't taken down their room. Their beds are still made. Their basketball trophies still dusted. She doesn't sleep through the night anymore. Some losses are too deep for time to clean. And now that the trials are over and the courtroom is empty, questions remain. How many step-parents silently harbor resentment? How many households look fine on the outside but boil under the surface? How many unnoticed tensions turn deadly? Could this have been prevented? Could someone have seen it coming? Or is divorce an ultimate price no child ever really stops paying? The Carter twins were buried side by side. Their story now public, but their dreams private. Their lives stolen, and the scars they left behind will never truly heal. Because what was lost here wasn't just 2 young boys. It was trust. It was peace. It was safety within your own family. And sometimes, the most dangerous person in a home is the one you believed would protect it. 2 lives were taken, a mother's worst nightmare, a father's greatest failure, and a killer who hid behind a wedding ring. Jehyem and Jalil Carter were just boys, innocent. bright, full of promise. They weren't supposed to be buried before their future even began. But they trusted the wrong person, and that trust was paid for with silence, with betrayal, and with blood. So we ask, how many families live with quiet tension ignored until it's too late? How many children are caught in the emotional crossfire of adult choices? How many step-parents wear a smile while hiding something colder beneath? And how often does the one who harms share your dinner table? Please drop your thoughts in the comments. We want to hear your voice, your pain, your perspective, your questions. Because stories like this don't end in a courtroom. They live on in the people left behind, in the lessons we take from them, and in the warning signs we promise not to miss again. As the shadows grow deeper, prepare yourself for another chilling tale. Mama took the hot water from the stove and poured it into the tub. My naked backside got splashed, and I tried to shield myself from Mama's bad aim and evil eye. Ouch. That's too hot. Boy, hush, she said. It really wasn't that hot. I was cranky because she'd wakened me up earlier than usual. She was in a foul mood this morning and grumbled about Mr. Hall and his trifling ways. Paying rent on time, and I gotta deal with this bullshit. I was hardly affected by her bad words, distracted by make-believe goblins in the bathwater. Mama washed her fancy outfits with woolite by hand in this tub. This morning, she washed me. I felt special, and I kicked at the rising circle of bubbles that threatened to suffocate me. Mama, is Mr. Hall gonna fix the hot water today? I wondered aloud. I'd learned not to question Mama about such things, but the words just slipped out. I braced for her reply. She didn't like Mr. Hall. She called him an old gray fossil, and when I asked her what a fossil was, she pinched my ear and told me to stay out of grown folks' business. She was liable to do anything this time as I stood naked and helpless in the tub. You just worry about getting your butt ready for school, she said. Her eyes were jagged little slits, and she dried me off with my favorite towel, cloaked in blue terry cloth. I was a superhero, and I flew away from Mama's dire mood. The sight of my school uniform, laid out and ironed on the bed, snapped me out of make-believe. I put on my school clothes and rushed back to Mama. I burst through the bathroom door to show her what I had done. Hold up, little man, she said. She spun around and her eyelids fluttered like butterflies. She fanned the air between us and stuffed a glass wand in the pocket of her robe. Her reflection was contorted, and I could see phantoms in the cloudy white smoke between us. Will you zip me up, Adie? She asked. I was a good boy and happy to be Mama's helper. Go get my black boots, she said. Her bedroom was a mystical place, and her approval to go and explore there sent me running. I almost fell headfirst in all the clutter. I could barely see anything beyond the heavy purple drapes that barricaded the room. I smelled heavy traces of Mama in there, maybe from the wardrobe of clothes that covered the floor. I found her black boots and saw gray shadows that covered Mama's linen like spider webs. Had the lump under the sheets moved? Boy, what you looking at? Mama stood in the doorway. Her skimpy dancer clothes made her look like my big sister. She snatched the boots. A sudden whack upside the head dropped me to the floor. I wanted to say I couldn't find them, but I rubbed the growing welt on the side of my head instead. I choked back a floodgate of tears. Mama navigated the ride to school in silence. She drove so fast that our neighborhood whirled by the car in dingy shades of gray. Shadows waved at me as we sped past. I wished for a chance to stay at home with Mama and never let go. Be good, she said, and covered my cheek with luscious kisses. I rubbed the wetness from my face and waved goodbye to Mama as she sped away. I sulked across the playground to the swings beneath the school's windows. Only a few children were here, and the schoolyard was quiet. Without the laughter of children and the eyes of chaperons, I wondered why I deserved to be there alone. I felt the tender spot on my head that Mama made. You want to fly like Superman. The monkey bars across from me were abandoned now. A man had been sitting there when Mama dropped me off. I had tried not to feel him watching me from behind his dark glasses. Now he was in the swing next to me. His shadow was like a grave on the ground. "I got a cape that can make me fly," he said, and I remembered my bath that morning when I ran through the house in my blue terry cloth towel. "For real?" I wondered aloud. "Will you show me how?" When he grabbed my arm as if to say yes, his hands were cold, and he had a twisted little grin. I heard Mama, her voice weak and listless like someone else's. "Officer, please call me." The closing door canceled her longing. Mama stood for a moment before she slid to the floor in a heap. She was crumpled, like a shattered doll, thrown against the ground. Softly, I tiptoed to the windows beside her and watched the detective leave our building. He walked to his squad car, and the trail of smoke and taillights disappeared like bloody footprints into the night. Mama paced from room to room, and I felt helpless to soothe her. She already knew I was gone. Her heavy purple drapes were open, and the room welcomed the twilight. Lamplight shimmered on sparkling new clothes that covered her bed. Toys and games lay in bags, unopened, and waiting for my return to her. She lingered in the mirror, her mind a million miles away, and I watched her, trapped by her beautiful reflection. "I love you, Elijah," she said. My eyes locked on hers. When she smiled, I crept out of the shadows. Her love for me was the bond that kept my spirit near. "Who they looking for, Mama?" I asked. I was transfixed by the beautiful, delicate things on her bed. Her face betrayed a hint of fear as she waved away my voice in her head. "Where my baby at?" she muttered to herself over and over. I sprung up to dance with the frilly tags and tissue paper that fell as she dressed and redressed in all the new outfits she had bought. She was the prettiest dancer I had ever seen. The clanny basement under Mama's apartment, where Mr. Hall slept until noon, smelled musty and dank. It stank of decaying fossils and dead things. The antiquated water heater still bellowed and moaned. It made awful noises that disturbed Mama and the dreams she had of me. She seldom had a restful sleep, disturbed by the guilt over her shortcomings. I knew Mama's restlessness would bring her downstairs. She searched the clammy basement walls for a light switch and fumbled in the darkness as I stood right there watching her. She had a flashlight, but the sliver of light didn't help much. Her face was streaked with salty tears, and she was determined to find the source of the wailing. The low-pitched grumble had ebbed and flowed and woke her up. She froze when she saw what I had hidden. She hadn't seen it or me since that morning in the iron tub, but I was still with her. Her little man would never leave. Pristine among the cobwebs, and the filth was my favorite blue terry cloth towel. I folded it the way she taught me and spread the smell of bubble bath within the soft cotton fibers.